Hello, welcome back to the Closed by Mo podcast. My name is Mohammed. You can call me Mo. Hopefully, I'm your favorite YouTube host on most things real estate. Today, I'm sitting down with a couple of my clients that actually bought their first investment property a few months ago. I'm with Steve and Phil. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you, Mo.
Of course.
Hi, my name is Stephen Nanny. I'm from Bethpage, New York, and we closed on our first property on March 1st of 2024.
And I'm Phil Frere. Grew up in Bethpage, just like Steven. And I'm very excited to get into the real estate market.
Cool. Well, I'll start off with Steve and then we'll move on to Phil with this question. Just to give you a bit of background on why I'm asking this, a lot of the folks that are watching this we're just like in your shoes or are currently in the shoes that you were in maybe 6 to 8 months ago, where they might not have had any real estate experience or any real estate background, but they know they want to get into real estate. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself in terms of what your background was in real estate, if you've made any investments before you bought in Long Island, or what does that look like?
Sure. So maybe a year and a half ago, I connected with realtors, lenders. I was bought a couple books online.
Gotcha.
Bigger Pockets also. Just started to dabble with whatever I can get my hands on to just understand what real estate is.
Got it.
I work in finance and I just never really understood real estate, so it was something that intrigued me. Also wanted to move out of my parents' house at some point.
Gotcha.
So I figured buying would be the best bet. I've heard so many things about long-term wealth with real estate, and I figured diversifying into real estate would be something I would like to do personally. So that's where my journey started, and then eventually led me to you.
Cool. And can you explain, I guess, for anyone that's listening or watching, was your family invested in real estate before? Did your parents own the house that you were living in? What does that look like?
Yes.
What background did you have?
Yes. So for about 30 years, my parents have owned a piece of property in Bethpage, where I grew up. So it's something that they've always told me buy, don't rent, which I understand is not always everyone likes to throw that around, buy, don't rent, but it was something that I always wanted to do. That's what my father always told me to do, and that's something I wanted to. But aside from that, my father's blue collar, never owned any real estate, so something that I felt like I needed to maybe change the course a little bit.
Got it.
And so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know in a few questions we'll talk about what your long-term goals are with this property, but Phil, can you tell us a little bit about what your background is or was not in real estate and your family's,
I'm a registered nurse, and I don't really have much of a background with real estate. It's definitely sort of like a side hobby or like something to basically make me more wealth.
Okay.
Because working as a nurse, you're doing a lot of hours, but I feel like I always wanted to propel myself forward more financially.
Gotcha.
And me and Steven have talked over time basically about how we want to set ourselves up for the future and how can we do that for ourselves. And previously I've rented for probably the last 5-6 years.
Got it.
And it just kind of worked out where we were both ready to take that leap of buying an investment property, and kind of just worked out perfectly for us.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys actually answered the next question I was going to ask, which was what sort of motivated you to get into real estate? I want to sort of address this a little bit because I end up working with a lot of people that have found, the Bigger Pockets forums, either one of them or a couple of them all together. Can you talk to me a little bit about how did we cross paths exactly? Because I know I'm sometimes active in the forums. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I remember you mentioning you had worked with other brokers, other realtors before. And I'm not saying this is a way to pat myself on the back or throw shade at anyone, but more so to highlight why it's important to work with people that are sort of aligned with you. Excuse me. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So Bigger Pockets was one of the areas I got drawn to from just researching online, trying to understand more about real estate. I was working with a realtor who was not communicating very well with me, wasn't listening to what I was saying. It was very kind of like a distant relationship, and so it kind of just faded, our relationship, where I no longer wanted to work with him anymore. Took a little bit of time off from that, but that led me to actually writing a post on the forum of Bigger Pockets.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yep, and it was about house hacking. For those that don't know what house hacking is, essentially it's buying a property as the the primary resident, living there for at least 1 year, and then after the year you can move and still get all the benefits of only low down payments, better interest rates, all that stuff. Basically locking in good benefits of a house. You have to live there for 1 year, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get out of my parents' house, buy a property. Hopefully it be a multifamily property where I can rent it out. Which would subsidize costs for me. So I actually wrote a post on a forum, and you had commented, giving me some good advice. Essentially, that house hacking is possible on the island.
Yes.
Even though Long Island is ridiculously expensive, it's tough to find.
The taxes, man.
The taxes
kill the cash flow, dude. It's crazy. Like, the prices are better than New York City, but you're paying a few $1,000s a month on taxes.
Yeah, which we're trying to grieve right now, but we have to wait till next year. But
Gotcha.
So you gave me a little bit of hope, which then led me to a month or two later. I think I just reached out and said, hey, you commented on my post.
Oh, yeah.
And it led to a phone call. Next thing I knew, you were my realtor.
There you go. The reason I bring that up is because I have worked with clients where I've just flat out told them, hey, I'm not the right fit for you. I'm not the right guy. And God bless, I'm at that point in my business where I can say that, because earlier on when I was maybe scrappy, a little bit hungrier, more desperate, for lack of a better term, I used to work with anyone and everyone. And I realized it just does not work that way.
Yeah.
It just does not work. There are goals and priorities that both of you had that I had already experienced. I'd gone through as a house hacker myself, and I sort of knew what things you guys had in the back of your mind. So that was a motivation behind asking that question. A question for Phil, because I know you were actively involved in the project of the renovations. Talk to me about the misconceptions that you had before starting it and how that changed after you had actually gotten your feet wet.
Yeah, definitely. So once me and Steven got into the house, it seemed like there wasn't a lot to do. We definitely wanted to do a lot of cosmetic stuff to the house. And then as we got in and we kind of wanted to, we had a picture in our head of how we wanted the house to look, how we wanted to basically go in and do the right things for the house, do a lot of renovations. And as we were going along with it, it kind of like dawned on us that we needed to do a little more work as we go. So as we were renovating and making changes to the houses, and then it kind of expanded to where we kind of just figured out we needed to do more, because we're kind of very attention to detail.
Gotcha.
So we wanted to, while we were living there for the year, we wanted to go in and just make the house like our own.
Got it.
And once we got in, it was like we were kind of battling different scenarios and basically just problem solving as we were going. But at the end of the day, we did it the right way. We don't want to have to go back essentially after we start renting to kind of fix those issues that we kind of just looked past as we're doing these renovations up front.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's great that you did that. It's better to spend $1 today than 50 cents 3-4 times just because you want to fix something that was done cheaply, right? I think it's great, and and I know we spoke about this before we started recording, but it does add value later on in a couple of years if and when you decide to sell. A question that I want to ask Stephen, I guess, because I just asked Phil. You guys, believe it or not, you're my first pair of clients that were not in any kind of romantic relationship. This was, you guys were friends buying together, which I personally am always like, hey, make sure you get everything, dotted down, because obviously it's a very big purchase, it's a very big transaction. Can you talk to me a little bit about, how you guys, because you guys have great energy together, you guys mesh really well together, you balance each other out. Can you talk to me about what it's like to buy something that big, an investment property together as friends? Like, if you don't mind me, saying, like, did you have any, a little bit of conflicts here and there? Because it is a stressful situation, like, especially renovating and purchasing and everything. So can you talk a little bit more about what that experience was like?
Yeah, no. So it was definitely a learning curve from the jump, having to understand, where we both were in our lives and where we wanted to end up.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of conversations early on, on and offline with you and the lender, and it really led us to a point where we were on the same page. We understood what we were looking for. When we got this house and we moved in, or we started renovating it, Phil and I, we would try and stay on the same page. I think I'm a very big thinker, and Phil is a very hard worker.
Gotcha.
So Phil will jump into a task, and I will be like thinking about like 3 tasks later.
Oh, okay.
Where that's where a few times me and him had to kind of like stop and say, okay, like I'm seeing that we should be getting this done, but we're doing this right now. We'd have to kind of regroup. And we did that a few times. And of course, just like any, we're just friends, but just even like a couple buying a house, there are going to be times where you're not going to get along.
Absolutely.
Just because there's a lot of work, there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot. I wouldn't say a lot on the line, but we want to make sure we're doing things right. We want to make sure that we're not going back and doing things twice. So Phil and I had a few times we had to have talks and understand that we're not always going to be on the same page.
Absolutely.
But as long as you can stay level-headed, have your conversations, communication's key. You can get past anything.
I completely agree, and I feel like you guys mesh so well together. I remember speaking to my girlfriend about it too, and I was like, showing you guys properties. You guys were so much on the same page, and it seems like you both have the emotional EQ for that. Because I deal with clients now that are like, oh my god, I bought this property with her a few years ago, and now here, help me out, what's going on? Those are not conversations you want to have because it gets very difficult very quickly. It's very tricky. So I guess, Phil, could you give us a little bit of insight on what that process looked like for you, and what was important for you going into it? Because obviously with any relationship, there's always compromise involved. But I want to talk about this because there are people out there who maybe they're single, and they're like, how the hell am I buying something in this market? I got to buddy up with a friend of mine to do it. So can you talk about it from that perspective?
Totally. Yeah, so me and Steven, just to go back, me and Steven have been friends for over 15 years. So so going through middle school, high school, even college, where we weren't like living close, it was like we were always like best friends. We were always talking, communicating the right way, and we were always just, our mindsets were the same. That's the thing that was kind of like, I don't know, making it very comfortable jumping into something like this that's high stakes.
Yep.
A lot of money, a lot of time and effort putting into it. We do, for the most part, have the same mindset on just communicating. We have little different tactics on how we kind of go about things, but like Steven said, communicating and just getting through those things and kind of just trying to understand where the other side's coming from and then coming up with a compromise was super important. With this, going through this whole process, because we were putting a lot of time, energy, effort, being away from friends, family for a while, but we made the best of it the whole time. And I would say communication is very key to getting through all those humps, and it kind of almost tested how our relationship was at the end of the day. And a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't invest with a friend. It could blow up in your face, but it's also a trust thing where you have to trust the other person, and if you trust each other and you keep communicating and working through those issues that we're having, because owning a house, they're gonna happen. We came out of the renovations we're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I'll post on the screen. I'll post the before and after picture of the renovations that these guys have done, because I was blown away. And it's been it took a few months to lock them down for the podcast because they've been so busy, and I know firsthand how busy it can get. Here's a question for each of you: do you have any regrets about the process, and if so, what are they? It can be anything from the house you bought, I hope not, and also renovations or anything that you've done. Can you talk a little bit about what regrets you have?
I could probably take this one. I know what it's going to be. The regret is not starting off our renovations with a design, and starting with the design and then going into the guts of the house, the plumbing, the electric, and working from there. We we were hanging ceiling fans before we ripped cabinets off the wall.
Oh, wow.
So because we didn't fully understand in what order we should renovate, different rooms. We almost renovated one of the bedrooms before we even touched one of the kitchens, and we ended up gutting the kitchen. So if we can go back and redo it, it would be walking into each room and saying to ourselves, what do we have to do with this room? Does this room need any electric run? Is there any plumbing that needs to be done? What are we ripping down? What are we keeping? What are we finishing? And really designing and breaking down every single room to a T. And then from there, starting with the highest priorities and working your way down.
Got it.
We were very eager, and not that we regret the approach that we took. it probably just took a little bit longer.
Got it.
You know, we probably could have. We could have been further along in the renovation process sooner.
Got it.
I wouldn't say it would have saved us any money. Like, what would you say?
Nah.
Probably was. So when it comes to finances, it didn't really affect us. It just took us more time.
The timeline, gotcha.
But that's one regret that we had, was not starting with where you should, which is looking at every single room and saying, what do we want it to look like after we're done, and what are all the steps that we need to get there.
Oh, so you guys didn't have that vision. Like, it wasn't like, hey, this is what we want the final product. You guys were just sort of like ripping stuff up and be like, oh, well, we should do this and we should do that.
Because we were novice and we were just starting off. Like, we didn't know what we needed to do. Like, we learned so much. Every single day we had another Amazon package coming in with a new tool and trying to figure out how to use this and what it's used for, and watching YouTube videos. So after this experience, and which even though I say that this is like our one downfall, turning that into a positive is that we learned so much from those downfalls after this first experience, that the next time we go after it,
absolutely,
we're going to know exactly how to do it.
I was just about to say, like,
definitely.
once the dust settles after a couple of years and we start to, let's say, you know, God willing, you're still working with them or whatever it is, and we go look at other properties, you'll know right away, like, oh, this is what's going on. We need this much price credit because of this, how much it's going to be, right?
Absolutely.
And you'll have that, like, almost PTSD of, like, oh, this needs to be fixed right away, or, you know what, we can wait to fix this one.
100%.
Definitely.
Agreed.
What about
And
you?
all like the connections we made throughout this process, it kind of like you're saying, if we go into the next house, we're looking at houses, we'll be able to kind of like pick out what we need to do to the house, and kind of in our heads calculate like how much is this going to cost up front, how much our renovation is going to be, and like if we can do this, you know. So but going back to your question,
your biggest regret?
Yeah, the biggest regret, I wouldn't say we have many regrets on the house. It's kind of just working through the kinks of like doing it for the first time.
Sure.
But as we're doing it, like, you know, we're enjoying it, and like even when we were in the house, like, you know, working late nights, it's like, this is where we're supposed to be right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, we're in a great neighborhood. We have so many nice neighbors that we've met already. And like, it's kind of like, all right, this is like exactly how things were supposed to go, you know?
I'm glad you said that too. If you're curious, you don't have to do this. If you want to, the pictures that you take, you could put up, and again, this is just if you're curious, because I've done this strategy too, just to test the market. You can put up, you know, like an apartment for rent, whatever it is, just to see what kind of feedback you'll get from it.
Okay.
And my rule of thumb is, if I'm getting more than 10 contacts a day, then I've priced it too low. Just something to keep in mind as you go throughout this process, just so you have an idea of like how much your property is going to be worth.
I like it.
Yep, of course. And I did that for my first ever property because I wanted to find out. So even before I closed on it, I just took the pictures and I posted. I shouldn't have done that, but I did.
Yeah.
The bank was like, "Are you like?" They're like, "Who posted this?" By the way, like,
Sure.
oh, sorry, that's me. But my last question then is, what advice would you give someone that is in your exact position 2 years ago, who were just starting to think about this, just starting to be like, oh, I think I want to do this with my buddy, with my partner, whatever it is. What's your top bit of advice from you first?
For me, advice, I would say first, make sure that you have enough funds to get into the property and not be strapped. You still have a life. That was one thing that we always talked about was, hey, look, like, we want to do this, but we don't want to give up seeing our friends and maybe go on the occasional vacation and you know, just living your lives. And of course, inflation's crazy and everything's expensive. Sure. So you want to be able to at least know that you're financially set if you were to jump into something like this. So that's one piece of advice I would say. And then from there, it's daily work. It's daily connecting with people. It's daily looking at houses, you know, calculating numbers, seeing what neighborhoods you like. You know, we spoke almost every single day early on. So I would say speak to your realtor. You know, go through the process. Don't skip any steps, and you know, enjoy the process, because the time goes quick and you learn a lot. So you have to really enjoy it. You can't, like, you know, be just ready to be, I just want to get the house ready, I just want it to be renovated. You have to understand it's a process.
Got it. No, that's really good advice for anyone, because especially the younger folks that are like, I want to get this now, I want to do this now. And I remember talking to you guys about this too. We don't want to rush into this. If you rush into it, you're going to make a mistake and you're going to end up hating me, because that's what ends up happening. Phil, what about you? What's the best bit of advice that you can give your younger self who's watching?
Yeah, I think just doing the research on your own. I think, you know, testing the waters with like who works best with you, and for you, Mo, like, great fit for us.
Thank you,
You're
thank
very responsive, very reliable. Whenever we had questions, you were very open to answering anything, hopping on a call when we were at work, or you're busy too.
Of course.
And I think that's very tough nowadays to find,
Yep.
especially in like maybe older real estate agents. They're not as tech savvy, or even like that great with their phones.
Yeah.
But I think just keeping all of us in the loop, especially because there's 3 people instead of like, let's say Steven was buying a
Yeah, of
house
course.
just by himself, it would just be like 2 people. But getting us all 3 on the same page and just going through this whole process together almost.
No,
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did not pay him to say that.
No, he didn't pay me,
I
don't
came
worry.
here asking for open and honest feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, because this business is difficult, but I enjoy it so much. And what makes it difficult and enjoyable at the same time is, number one, you get to work with awesome people like yourselves. But what makes it difficult is the other people that you have to deal with. And you'd be shocked at, and I'm coming from a very corporate environment, right? I used to work in Manhattan. I'm used to a certain type of acumen. I'm working with brokers that they don't know how to send an email. They don't know how to click a link when I send them a text message, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm like, how are you brokering this like $1 million plus transaction? Like, your clients know this is what you're like, how you're acting. And I can't imagine someone like that working with like first time buyers, first time investors. You really need a little bit of hand holding, for lack of a better term, but someone who's available to hop on a call with you and just speaking with other people who are listening and watching. You will 100% go through every single scenario with a lot of skepticism. That is normal. It is a human behavior to be like, how am I going to, where's it going to come back to bite me? What's going to happen? Who's screwing me over? That is 100% normal. I've been through it too. That's why I always like to be like, hey, I'm available. Let's talk things through. Even talking through difficult subjects, it's important to lay it out on the table so no one get their feeling hurt or any confusion. But thank you guys for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Mo.
See you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.